What's up? Wow, I'm playing. Good to meet you, Andy. Samta. How's life going, Chris?
All good, yeah? How's love?
Nice to finally meet you. I've been reading about your work, commendable stuff. I mean,
करते हैं guys. Let it be shit.
Aquaterra, everything is based out of Calcutta, I'm assuming.
Mostly, yeah, Calcutta, West Bengal.
So how does it work now that you're here in Ashoka?
So, Aquatra is not just about me, right? It's a big organization with mostly school students from Calcutta. So, even if I'm here, the operations in Calcutta can be majorly run by them. All I need to do is, let's say, if they need suggestions, I give them a guiding light. Otherwise, mostly they don't need that. It's just something that's running in Calcutta. When I'm there, I help them with the operations on ground. When I'm here, I try to be part of it as much as I can online. But sometimes I'm not able to, and that's fine.
But does work slow down when you're here?
I wouldn't say it slows down. I would say that there are a certain kind of projects that I like taking up myself. So those projects kind of reduce because I want to take them up myself when I am in Calcutta. But when I'm not there, then some other people take up some other projects. It's not about me being the one who's supporting Aquaterra through or whatever projects we're doing. It's more about Aquaterra doing these projects, and whoever wants to take them up can take them up. Whoever is capable enough to lead them leads them. So
So, uh, what was the idea behind Aquaterra for people who may not know the story behind your organization? You wanna talk about the organization a little bit?
So the idea behind Aquaterra, so the way it started, it was mostly for okay, funny story actually. I was this school kid in class 12 during COVID, spending too much time playing video games like on my mobile. Generally, that's how it started. And I realized that I was wasting too much of time doing that. So I just wanted to do something productive. That's how Aquaterra started in the first place. Just for doing something productive and giving back to the society, doing something good out of my time. Very soon, like within a half a month or a month, I realized that I'm not the only kid who who is not being able to use his time better or not being able to do something productive. There are so many more. So the point of it became not just doing good for the society yourself, but making a movement out of it and making a community out of people who want to give back to the society or who can do better with their time, getting them together and doing better for the society, like better for the society, better with their time, everything together.
Was it like the first societal issue of law that stood out to you that you felt like needs work on?
So we started off with something like something around water conservation actually. Like right now, I would say our scope is not at all limited to water conservation or even environmental welfare for the matter. But in the beginning, it was water conservation and environmental welfare. We soon realized that we need to expand because uh, in the beginning, when you're not that established, it's not about what you want to do per se, but it's about what you can do. And we realized that the opportunities that we had at that time were not too many. They were limited. So we had to take out whatever we got, whatever form of welfare that we could do, and not just like confine ourselves to the realms of, let's say, water conservation or even environmental welfare.
Yeah, I feel like the youth is now actively looking for causes to champion. I feel like our privilege has allowed us so much ignorance to the point that we fail to even look outside and empathize with what the situation on ground is. And forums like yours actually help people to understand that the world is much bigger than we think in our heads it is. And then actually come up with solutions to make a difference.
Right.
You started something about around you started a project in the Sundarbans as well. Right? Tell us more about that.
About Sundarbans, okay, so we've had I think 6 to 7 visits to Sundarbans up tak. Sundarbans is more for relief work or for giving back to the society, which is not very close to us. So me, for example, or you, we are city children. We are city kids, and we only interact with people in the city. So more often than not, even though misery that we see, it's confined to the comforts of the city. It's very important to get an exposure of what's happening in the world outside of the world that we're seeing, outside of the bubble that we live in. Sundarbans was basically a place that we wanted to go to help people who don't even have the resources that can be provided to the. For example, I think a lot of people already do welfare in cities, but not a lot of people think about what they can do outside of the city or actually help people who don't even have access to that little welfare in the city.
So tell me more about the demographic in Sundarbans. Are these like, is this like a tribal community? Is this a township? Is there relief that exists? Is the government supporting them? What's the situation?
So I cannot say the government is not supporting them because we ourselves kind of take the government's help to go there in the first place. But I would say the government did support us in helping them in the sense that they helped us reach there. After reaching there, I think the amount of welfare they get is limited to the little that people, generous people, are willing to uh, subject or like give to them. I wouldn't say it's a tribal community or something like that, but it's not even a township. It's somewhere in between, I would say.
How big is the demographic in the Sundarbans?
So the villages that we've visited, I think there were about 100 people to 150 people per village.
What are the amenities like in these villages? Is there access to resources over there?
So amenities like clean drinking water, partially there, partially not. Proper built houses, no. Fields with only salt water and all. So I think the problem there is that they have very little that they can do themselves to even hit back from there. For example, if they're not getting clean drinking water or potable water, how are they even going to plant? Like, how are they even going to harvest their crops? To be
So
able to
you can farm in the marshes.
you can, but only specific things like supari you can farm in the marshes. I think something like grapes you can, but not something like wheat.
Maybe tell me more about Sundarbans. I'm really curious. The project really struck me out. You've done multiple campaigns over there. I've seen that every campaign had a different goal from the get go. Be it plantation drives, be it doing, creating access to practical supplies. What's your biggest takeaway from the Sundarbans project?
My biggest takeaway. So, Sundarbans is actually one of my very first projects as part of Aquaterra as well. As part of any sort of social welfare, after starting Aquaterra, Sundarbans was, I think, the first two projects that we ever took were both Sundarbans. So, I think Sundarbans helped shape me as a person a lot into thinking as deeply about charity or about social welfare. I would actually not say charity now after the insights from you. It's shaped me so much more as someone looking into social welfare. And I feel that I'm not the only child who needs that. I feel there are so many more privileged children like myself who need that. So, one key takeaway from Sundarbans is that as much as I felt that maybe I could help them a little bit, let's say 2%, to make their lives better for that single week or that single day, I felt they could make my life at least 50% better for the rest of my life by that one or two solo visits. And I want to do that to the rest of the youth as well, the privileged youth, so that they also feel 50% better than they did before visiting. And they feel like helping these people out at least 2% more than they do right now.
Of course, of course. Okay, let's talk about Paradox. Paradox is another huge project. For the people who have not heard of Paradox about Paradox yet. Give us a small brief about the project.
So the reason behind Paradox was that it started when around we were around 6 to 7 months in. We realized that there were a lot of student-led NGOs in Calcutta. A lot. When I'm telling you a lot, like at least 30 to 40 student-led NGOs moving in Calcutta itself. The problem with them was that it just felt as if all of these were targeted at college CVs and they were all created for a sense of just, like doing 4 drives, doing some sort of donation, and then just being able to fill that in your college application that, oh, I did this thing with a social welfare project. I wanted to change that stigma completely. So, Paradox is basically to stabilize these NGOs essentially by creating a collaborative projects between these 30 NGOs. So, what ended up happening is Paradox is basically carried out by not just Aquaterra, but like we approached around 40 to 50 other NGOs and got 30 on board. And it was 30 different student led organizations coming together for one fest. It was just a fest. It wasn't even a like following Paradox, we had a lot of collaborative with like 30 angels together. We had a lot of collaborative drives, but it started with one fest for the children to participate, and people talked about it a lot. 30 angels coming together in Calcutta. It was a huge deal. And what ended up happening was that owing to this, it started a friendly rivalry between these NGOs. And all of these NGOs felt as if, okay, I need to do more social welfare. I need to do better. I need to get more volunteers. And everyone felt like, okay, I want to join this NGO. No, I want to join this one. It seemed as if, you know, think of it like energy drinks becoming the king of the day. And then Coca-Cola and Pepsi, both of them being like, no, I want to do better. And then Sting coming in being like, I'll do better. So it was like instead of just one NGO trying to do welfare or trying to do better, it was 10 to 12 at least more NGOs who picked up after Paradox and they were like, okay, no, we want to be the NGO of Calcutta. And that friendly rivalry led to so much more welfare, which Aquata did not do very honestly. It was them doing it. But it all started from that little spark of friendly rivalry.
There's something so beautiful in camaraderie between founders of NGOs. It's just hilarious. Uh, we've been collaborating with another organization out of Bangalore for a minute, and it's crazy how volunteers just transcend each other and they're just there to help out for the greater good, and everyone's just looking for a cause to make a difference.
Right.
And that at the end of the day ends up maximizing what you are trying to do in the first place.
Exactly.
So it's crazy. I mean, it's a community in itself, and being a part of it is really fulfilling. Okay. What's your core motivation? Like, if I had to ask you, what's the greater purpose of Aquaterra?
Greater purpose of Aquaterra. I think the purpose has because we're a relatively very new organization, the purpose has kind of been changing throughout the past 3.5 years. The main purpose has always been giving back to the society, social welfare. But I think as of right now, I would say for me, it's not just confined to giving back to the society. It's more of making students feel the need or the urge to give back to the society. It's not the sense of doing 100 units of welfare to the society. It's making 20 people or 50 people feel the need to do 10 units themselves, so it multiplies that.
Yeah, that's every change maker has given me this idea, but has framed it in some way or some different way.
What's your story about this though? Like about Inspire India also, how do you see what is the change that you want to make through Inspire India?
I want individuals to be capacity built to the point that they realize that they are something greater than themselves. The entire idea lies in the core of something which is called active citizenship. It's the difference between civil and civic, as I see it. Civil is when you are living your life actually, abiding by the rules, playing under the radar, no, not causing an issue to anybody else. When teachers say stay civil in class, things don't create a problem, don't cause a ruckus. Civic is somebody who understands where they are placed in tandem to society and choose to actively do something to improve their standard of living as well as the standards of living around them. People see charity, people see social work and community engagement as charity, which is a stigma that I would want to break. I feel like it comes from our duty as citizens to be able to create forums and platforms where we can come together and try to bridge the gap that exists between the 1% of privilege and the 99% of less privilege. Um, I read a stat somewhere that says 1.5% of this country's richest population owns about 50% of India's wealth. That means if you mobilize just the 1%, you get access to about 50% of India's resources difference. So if the privileged could to make a difference and understand what their beauties are and deficits, only then you can make a change all around. That is the core philosophy behind Inspire India. So if I have nobody's ever asked me this question, I always ask other people what their greater purposes. I feel like my greater purpose is to, just create this into a movement, as you said, where this idea transcends just the individual and goes on to the collective, and people really want to take up this idea and also find places where they can make a difference. Like a lot of people are like, they see a poor child on the street begging, and they'll be like, "Usko 20 rupees दे दिया, but ये problem solve नहीं कर रहा है. Tomorrow the kid is going to be begging again. How do I fix the problem from the core?" Next thing you know, there's initiatives like Teach for India, which are teaching street children on the streets and making sure that they're able to an extent. Then you realize there's initiatives like an earlier podcast we covered the story of this person. He started a school under the flyover of a bridge, He rounded up kids from Signals,
Hmm.
took them under this school called the Signal School, and he decided that I'm going to give you everything that you would be out there other for, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to be something beyond just this. Kids who are begging on the streets are now chartered accountants. Our kids in the IT sector, our children with much better paying jobs that is giving them steady monthly in beyond what they could have imagined. Volunteers can come and create that places like this, but there need to be people who are creating such forums, just like you, who give young want to be change makers an opportunity to make a difference on the ground. I feel like my purpose is creating just another forum just to make a difference. But
Inspiring, actually.
as the founder of Aquaterra, tell me what's the biggest challenge you faced running an NGO to date?
The biggest challenge I've faced. I would say the toughest part of it is just making people feel like they're in charge. Because one of the ways in which I like to lead is that I don't want to be the leader. I've, in fact, I don't believe I'm a very nice leader. What I try to do is that I try to get a team of nice leaders, and I was very lucky to have one. I got a very nice team from the very beginning. Even right now, I've got a very nice team of leaders working with me. The toughest part for me is making them feel like you're the ones on the chair, it's not me. And a lot of times they feel like, okay, no, we need to ask Krish what to do, or we need to take Krish's approval, or will Krish like this? But the biggest challenge I face is making them feel like no, Aquatar as a platform, if one guy started it does not mean that that guy is taking complete authority over it. It's about everyone who's part of Aquatar trying to do something good, and everyone who's trying to do something good is leader in themselves, and they need to do something themselves. It's not just something that they're choosing to doing, it's something that they need to do
Correct.
as a responsible citizen, I would say, or as a responsible student. So making them feel this need, or making them feel like they're the leaders, is something that I believe is very important, and I think that's something that I still need to learn more than I know right now.
Even the definition of leader, I think, is very fluid. It's not always a person who's commanding on what to do, but perhaps a person who creates an environment where there is collaborative action that is focused on maximizing what you're trying to do in the first place.
Exactly.
It's not limited to just being on the command at all times. That's something that even I try to implement at Inspire. And it's nice to see that there are people relating to the same philosophy. On the note of leadership, what's your go-to plan of action when you want to try to maintain morale at Aquaterra?
So, like I said, my go-to action, at least what I try to do, is the same. It's making people feel like they were the leaders, because essentially it's them doing the work. It's not me. I just started a forum. Very frankly, there's little I've done since. It's more of what they have done since. Everything that is done in Aquater that has been done, it's been done by its volunteers, it's been done by its members, it's been done by everyone who's part of Aquaterra. So my go-to action always is just making them feel like they need to take the decisions, because they're the one who'll be implementing it. If at any point of time they feel like we don't need to ask Krish what is to be done, I feel like I'm successful. And very frankly, I think from our little conversation before the camera chat, I felt like that is something that I can learn even better from you. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your leadership style?
So creating a forum is one, I completely agree with you. But after that first step is taken, you need to figure out a way to decentralize your organization. I feel like if it's always going to be sit at the helm trying to run everything, nobody's going to think by themselves. Everybody's going to come and ask it for approval, like you say. Hey, you need to be able to capacity build your leaders. Now, that's obviously not going to happen from the get go. You need to set expectations, you need to set boundaries. But what I do at Inspire is, suppose I'll assign a task, or I'll create a requirement that this is a project that's coming up and this is what I need from the team, and I'll ask someone to take lead on it. And usually it's on volunteer basis. And now that we've divided roles, it's pretty clear on who's handling what. But we're super flexy on deadlines at Inspire. Like if I need something from you, I'll tell you 15 days in advance. But on the 15th day, I don't expect you to switch up on me and say, me said, you know what I promised you is not gonna happen. That kindly has not happened at Inspire ever since. So I remember there's somebody who's handling the technical team for me, and I called him and I was like, We don't have the footage that we needed yet. And he's like, Sid, I've been calling the team. They're not doing anything. They're not listening to me. I don't know what to do. It's not going to work. The first thing I said to him, look, I've given you a position where you have some sort of authority when it comes to getting work done. I see you as a leader. And one of the first things that a leader needs to recognize is that they must fill in the gaps wherein required within their team, even if it comes at their own cost. There's been many a times where we've tried to get a video out on time, and because a certain editor was not available, I've had to step in and do it. And my laptop doesn't even support editing. So I have to borrow somebody else's laptop and I get the thing done. So what I told him was, even though, just make sure that the team looks good from the outside. We've got 15 teams at Inspire India. Now the teams don't directly communicate with each other, but they know what the other is doing at all times. These aren't names that are taken in the process. These are the team's names that are taken in the process, right? So at the end of the day, when you're representing a team and you're a part of a team, and you need to make sure your team looks good, that sense of camaraderie makes you want to get work done on ground. And I feel like that sense of responsibility, once inculcated within a team, takes a lot of work off of my hands. And I just need to come in and just re-establish the morals of what we are trying to do over here and be like, guys, we cannot afford to slip up. Maybe that needs to happen once a while, but then rest is taking care of the team by itself. And the team is full of leaders, I would say, more than followers. Everybody wants to do their own thinking. Everybody wants to contest what I'm doing. But that's at the very core of Inspire. I feel like if I'm sitting in a room and I'm surrounded by people that are only saying yes to me all the time, it's gonna make me doubt my own capabilities at some point in time. And when you have people around you questioning what you are doing at all points in time, scrutinizing every step of the way, that just creates more room for quality. So I'm always open to criticism. I'm always open to scrutiny. I always want to create a platform where people are open to share their and communicate their standings and their opinions with each other, and just create a more deliberative space to make a difference. It's translated down to the volunteers also. I've got volunteers texting me and messaging me. Well, I've made a post about this. Our inspires views shifting on a certain issue, or why are we getting into project A when certain resources need to be allied towards project B. And as long as I'm open to scrutiny and I have to justify what I'm doing to other people at all points in time, makes me also want to understand that my answers need to be foolproof. Therefore, my actions have to be foolproof. So creating a platform that allows for such things was my get go. And once there is a collaborative network, it is decentralized to a point where you are just at the help and you're the sailor of the ship, but there's 20 other components of the ship that are being taken care of, 20 other people without whom the ship won't sail. That's my logic. I say. Anyways, about Aquaterra, what plans for 2025?
For 2025, Aquaterra in 2025 is also trying to decentralize, inspired from you actually. So we want leaders from Aquaterra taking up projects, different projects, and leading it completely. For example, it could be a project in their own school. You've got social welfare clubs in every school, right? What if someone takes up the initiative and tries to do social welfare beyond the minimum requirements for their social working hours in their own school? They're a leader in themselves, and Aquaterra will help you with in any way that we can with our contacts, with our resources to help you do the social welfare. But we want you to take the leadership yourself. That's something that we want to do in 2024, 2025. I'm so sorry. Another thing we want to do is that we want people from within Aquaterra to feel like, okay, there is so much more that I can do with my time. It's not just limited to, let's say, preparing for my exams or playing basketball when I'm free. Of course, they need to be done. But apart from that, there is also a sense of social responsibility that you have. And I think that that needs to be inculcated in students when they're students, not only once they're 40 and they're old enough. Because social responsibility is not monetary, very honestly. It's not about the amount of money that you're willing to give to charity. I think that that's a very old fashioned approach. I think it's more about the amount of feeling that you resonate with the people, the feeling that you have to make a change, and when you have that feeling, you will want to help in whatever capacity as you can.
Of course.
And I think the way in which a student can help is by that time. And one thing that I want happening in 2025 through Aquaterra is that people feel that they need to give some time, some emotions to giving back to the society. That's one thing that I really want.
It's really nice, bro. It's really nice. ठीक है. All right. Okay, if I wanted you to give one parting message to whoever's made it to the end of the podcast, something about leadership, something about change making, go for it.
So, I would say I have been very inspired by Sid himself in the limited 2 hours that I got to spend with him today. Um, I think even when you're trying to inspire, getting inspired is something you always keep on doing. Like I just got inspired today. And I would say that if you got even 1% inspired today by Inspire India or by a conversation, um try to inspire someone else because it's really a chain. It's not about you getting inspired and trying to do good yourself. Of course it's that, but it's not just that. It's also about you trying to get everyone around you to inspire others and themselves through, like, think of it as a movement and not just you trying to do good yourself.
Change is contagious.
Change is contagious. Thank you.
ठीक है.
So very
Cheers, man. Thanks for being here. I really.
thank you so much for being here. Thanks Gahan for inviting me actually.
And just come in the camera and say hi. Let's go. Chalo. Cheers.
Cheers, you man.
Chalo. Good talk, yaar. Krish. Let's.
No, good talk.
let's
to
set
you.
up a
Thank
big
you so much. 100%. I absolutely love to.
So
Quick shout out to Kanishk and the entire team Aquaterra for making all of this possible.